Okay, everybody, drafters, and for those of you who've been following the draft, we are finally on our last full draft analysis. Um, for the two people that came in and replaced the two dropouts, I am going to do a shorter version, maybe with a different graphic for you guys. I'm not going to do a full analysis. While I feel it's fair and unfair at the same time, you guys didn't get to draft your full own team, so I don't want to correlate that draft team to you guys because it's not particularly your draft and you're the ones that you wanted per se. So but without further ado, move this, we are going to get into this draft analysis on Richard's team. So Richard's team, I scored overall a 38. So he's got some things going for him, but he's got some things that are very, very notable on the team. He has got a lot of type overlap here. You have type overlap with Zoroark and Crocodile. You have overlap with Registeel and Magnezone. You have overlap with Area and Finny, and then Mantine as well, and Crobat. So it's just a lot of overlapping weaknesses, we'll say. I'm not going to gut into all of them right now. I will mention some of them in the defense, but I don't want to completely tear apart the defense, because I haven't done that for every single team. So, but yeah, overall a 38. The things he's got going for him, the Mega Altaria is actually a really good Pokemon, I think. A lot of people overlook this mon, but I think it's actually really, really strong. It can be physical or special. It can be a defogger, can be a setup mon. It's a good mon. Especially having the ability Pixelate and Hyper Voice, which I've mentioned before, is really nice in draft because there's always going to be those people who like their subs. But yeah, let's get into the offense, which I scored an 8 here. Now, his offense, really the big focal point of this offense has been Mega Altaria here. Just really strong for him in the setup category. The Dragon Dance set is really nice, but also, in a physically or especially offensive side, the Mega Altaria provides him good coverage, so we'll get into that. The Mega Altaria having Pixelate, of course, is going to allow it to either use Hyper Voice and get the Pixelate boost, or Return, which is really, really good. Dragon Dance Return is just awesome. So the set that I want to get into, which I mentioned with in my analysis series for the NCPL, is this set that some of the other fairies have. Notably, the one that I wanted to talk about in the NCPL was Mega Odino. Having Refresh is super overlooked. Dragon Dance, Return, Refresh, Roost. If the opponent doesn't have a strong Steel type to immune your attacks, or a Poison type or a Fire type, or you can get rid of those mons effectively, Dragon Dance, Return, Refresh, Roost is, what are you going to be able to do? You can't Toxicate, you need to attack it, so you need to have something in the back ready for it, right? A Poison type or a Poison move, a Steel type or a Steel type move. But yeah, as far as its coverage goes, it also has Flamethrower. Like I said, the Hyper Voice, it does have, the typical fairy moves like Dazzling Gleam, Draco Meteor as well. We do have Earthquake, like I mentioned. You have Fire Blast and Flamethrower. You have Heal Bell as well. You have Iron Tail. It does get Moonblast, which I was curious about. Play Rough as well. Generally, you're just going to run Return, though. And some interesting utility options, which I'll get into later. But that's about it for Mega Altaria. Not a whole lot to it. You generally know it's going to be coming in some sort of setup, since it can't utilize an item to boost its attacks. It's definitely going to be coming as some sort of setup. Maybe a defogger, but he's got ample defoggers or good ones on his team to do that for him. And then next we have Tapu Fini here, which I will mention as a slight offensive threat because the Taunt, Calm Mind, Draining Kiss set is really obnoxious. It's good because you can't poison it because the Misty Terrain. Then you can taunt the defensive Pokemon, start setting up, and start chipping away at these other teams here. Pair that with like a Nature's Madness or something. You're able to do some big damage to teams. But third on the list for offensive capabilities here is his one of two of his only wall breakers, I'd say, which is one of the things that I think falls on his team a little bit. He has some really nice slow U-turns between Electros and Mesprit to some extent, but he doesn't have much to get off of them besides this Magnezone with Analytic, or Specs, or Typhlosion with Eruption, right? But Magnezone really hurt in Gen 8 by the addition of Body Press. No longer trapping these Steel types is its thing. I mean, generally it's gonna like to trap like Skarmory and things like that, Skarmory and Corviknight. But now with Ferrothorn and things like that getting Body Press, even Corviknight and Skarmory also getting Body Press, it really hurts this Pokemon because it's going to be able to, in some cases, one-hit KO it. In some cases, it's going to be one-hit KO'd by those Mons, or two-hit KO'd, and it's not going to be able to do the same back in some degrees. So it does, but like I said, it does get Analytic, it does get Flash Cannon, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, and of course Hidden Power is available. It also did get access to Body Press as well, so there is the ability to run Iron Defense Body Press on it, on those Mons that think they can just Body Press for free. It is able to do that as well. Mirror Code is an interesting option, which I mentioned in one of my drafts just a couple analysis ago, which I'm surprised doesn't use more often to bait in Mons that think they're going to be able to one-hit KO it. You EV it to absorb the attack and then fire back with a one-hit KO attack. So as for other covers, that's really all Magnezone has. Like I said, we do get access to Hidden Power. Explosion might be nice if you're going to set up like, the Mega Altaria here as well. Something that is really cool about it though, it does get teleport, so if you know that the Pokemon you're in front of or that you're going to be facing is slower, you don't want those fast Volt Switches, you can teleport and get in that free Mega Altaria or that free Zoroark, maybe Typhlosion, or whoever your setup Pokemon is going to be. So to some extent, its Magnezone is still nice, still does lots of damage. So, but next we have Crocodile here, which is a great Pokemon in draft. Having Intimidate and having Moxie is really nice because it can be a really great cleaner, but it can also be a good Stealth Rock setter with Intimidate. It can force a lot of switches. We do have access to Pursuit this draft as well, which is really nice. So its coverage, it getting close combat this gen was really awesome for it. So Earthquake, Knockoff, close combat. We do have Stone Edge as well. We did get Pursuit. I mean, you could mention Crunch, but Knockoff is usually going to be nicer. Does get Bulk Up, which is really nice. Darkest Lariat could be used in some circumstances where the opponent's going to want Iron Defense or something like that. Darkest Lariat does ignore that, so... we do have Fire Fang as well for those pesky Steel types, or those Steel Bug types, or those Steel Grass types. So that is kind of nice. And it does also get Outrage, which we've seen Richard use before as well, which is kind of nice if you need to cover the Dragon types, since we don't have any access to Ice type moves. But next on the list here is the second of the two wall breakers, is Typhlosion. Now, Typhlosion... Where are we here? Now, Typhlosion, not the greatest move pool, but Hidden Power really helps it out. It does have Flash Fired, so it's going to help the Registeel and the Magnezone out really nicely. Getting in those switches on the Flash Fire, boosting its Fire type attack. So getting in on a Flash Fire and then firing off an Eruption is going to do a crazy amount of damage. That's kind of where this Pokemon ends. It's Eruption or Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Focus Blast, and then of course a Hidden Power. It does get access to Earthquake. I think Burn Up is another interesting option if you want to fire off a really strong stab move and it makes you become typeless. Then you might absorb Stone Edge or whatever the move is potentially coming. And it does also get Thunder Punch, Thunder Punch as well. Will-O-Wisp, which you've seen Richard use, which is a really great offensive option because you can run Eruption, you can run all those offensive moves still, but if you don't need one of them, you can run Will-O-Wisp, and it becomes this like Suedo bulky Mega Charizard X, right? To some extent, of course, if you EV it correctly as well. So, but secondly, we have Chestnut here, which I will do a quick mention on because we did see Richard. I sworn we seen him. I was on crack or something. Thought I seen him now. Anyways, it does get Belly Drum, which is really interesting because it does get Drain Punch. Belly Drum, Drain Punch on a defensive Pokemon like this. Unfortunately, times 4 weak to Flying, which a lot of teams don't have resistances to. But yeah, it does get Bulk Up to the... What's its ability? It's that ball one, right? Yeah, Bulletproof, which is kind of nice. Bulletproof, immune to Ballistic Move, Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, Moon Blast, Focus Blast, things like that. So it's not going to be killed by those fairies because they won't be able to Moon Blast, which is really nice. So if the opponent doesn't realize that and they have Moon Blast instead of Dazzling Gleam or Hyper Voice, Pixelate, something like that, they will run into a problem because this will be able to Belly Drum in their face and do some serious damage with Wood Hammer, Drain Punch after a Belly Drum. Does also get Poison Jab, gets Iron Tail. What else we got? Pin Missile. We have Shadow Claw. We have Smackdown, Earthquake, Stomping Tantrum, Stone Edge. Does get Sword Dance as well, which is really nice if you don't want to use the Belly Drum. Since its attack is quite good, actually. Attack reaching 107 base, which is kind of nice. So it's definitely got the bulk to not have to put EVs into defense if you don't need to. Put them all into HP and attack. From this, Pseudo Bruiser, right? Mesprit is next here. Mesprit is just an all-around great draft Pokemon. 80 HP, 80 speed, and then 105 in attack, defense, special attack, and special defense. So really, really nice, cleaner U-turner, Scarfer Pokemon. It's got great coverage. It's got... it did get access to Nasty Plot as well, so it could be a setup sweeper. Because it is bulky enough, you could pair that with a Colbur Berry, you could pair that with a Life Orb. It's going to do a serious amount of damage after a Nasty Plot. So its coverage, though, we have Psychic, Psyshock, Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, we have Ice Beam, we have Draining Kiss, we have Thunderbolt, and on the physical side we have U-Turn, we have Psycho Cut, I wish it was Psychic Fangs, Play Rough, Knock Off, Ice Punch, like I said, Drain Punch, which is really good for it. Does also get Calm Mind as well for the Calm Mind Draining Kiss. Could have sworn it got Cosmic Power. Could have sworn it got Cosmic Power. I'm off today. Well, anyways, the set that I was going to mention, though, is, a Calm Mind, maybe Weakness Policy set. Because it does get access to stored power. So it's bulky enough, especially to run a Weakness Policy, plug those EVs into defense or special defense, depending on what you think you're going to hit by. Set up that Weakness Policy, set up that stored power, maybe Calm Mind, maybe run Draining Kiss so that you can get some recovery in. Pretty obnoxious to potentially deal with. So a really good mon. Obviously not on the same level as Mew, but I'd compare it in the same way that it can kind of do a whole lot of things. Because I'll get into that on the defensive side as well. Registeel, I'm going to mention Iron Defense Body Press, a set that everyone should always be prepared for. But yes, a way to make Registeel not such a passive mon. We then have Electros here, with the slow U-turn and Volt Switch since it's base 50 speed, but base 115 attack and base 105 special attack, and then 80s across the rest. Does have good coverage, Volt Switch, Giga Drain, Flamethrower, Acid Spray, which I actually found really good against fairy types because it lowers their SPDF by 2. It's pretty obnoxious. Gets Knockoff, gets Drain Punch, gets Coil as a setup, which we have seen Richard use as well. Does get Dragon Tail to phase out those setup sweepers, which is really nice. What else do we have? Rock Slide here. We do have Super Fang as well, which I have used myself and Richard has used as well. Is really nice to catch these Pokemon that you're not going to deal a bunch of damage to, or a Pokemon that's going to be switching in from full health. You can get the 50% off on it. So a lot of good offensive options here from the Electros, able to be a mixed set, a physical or special set. Make it really, really good for any fit of the team because having Levitate as well gives it no weaknesses. So you're going to be able to lead this Pokemon. You're going to be able use this Pokemon to absorb attacks. Of course, switch in on Earthquakes as well, since this team has a lot of Earthquake. 1, 2, 3. And then we have Zoroark here, which is kind of a wonky pick to me, but I think he's made it work really well. I didn't realize Zoroark gets the ability anytime. I thought it only got it once, so it can kind of be a really annoying Pokemon to deal with, because you don't actually know if the opponent has sent out the one that it's disguising itself as, or if it's actually Zoroark itself. So it can kind of become a bit tricky. It really, I guess, just a tedious Pokemon to deal with in the match, because you always got to think about, okay, is this Zoroark or is this the Pokemon that's in front of it, right? Considering Zoroark does get some good options to it: Throat Chop, Trick, Sucker Punch, U-Turn are the options that they have listed here, but generally you're going to see the Nasty Plot set with Flamethrower, Sludge Bomb, Dark Pulse, 40%. Yeah, that's generally what you're going to see. Maybe a U-turn in one of those spots, just to, if it doesn't need that extra coverage, just to come in, deal some damage, and not reveal the Nasty Plot right away. But yeah, Zoroark, a pretty tedious Pokemon to deal with, because you always gotta, be on your toes. You always gotta be thinking. You can't just, kind of switch your brain off and go into autopilot mode. But it has great stats in terms of offensive capabilities: 105 attack, 120 special attack, and 105 speed. 105 speed, of course, reaches that 339 tier, which is decent. It's pretty good. Not amazing, not great, but it's pretty good. It's above the 100, which is a nice thing to have on a team. And then last but not least here, we have Crobat, which I am going to mention as an offensive option, even though I feel like this is going to be a more defensive option for the team. Crobat having Infiltrator is really nice for these teams that want to set up screens. There actually is a fair bit of screen setting in this draft. John, of course, setting up screens. Blade, I believe, setting up screens as well with Orbeetle. And then you have Aurora Veil on Vanillix, Aurora Veil on the Alola Ninetales. So that Infiltrator is going to be really nice to fire off that Brave Bird without having to worry about the screens. But does have access to some good coverage between Brave Bird, Crunch, Cross Poison, Dual Wing Beat, which it got stabbed for if you don't want to run the Brave Bird. Does have Heat Wave, does have Hurricane. So it can be kind of both sets if you need it to be. The Heat Wave I didn't actually know about until I seen Richard use it. But really good if there's Steel types in the game, especially the Steel bugs, because they're gonna be able to switch into this Crobat usually in no problem, and so is the Ferrothorn, and they're gonna be able to deal the, either the Iron Barbs, Rocky Helmet damage to the Crobat. If they're gonna be expecting the U-turn, he can fire off a Heat Wave, right? But yeah, mostly Crobat. It's got a lot of utility and defensive options that I will get into on the defensive side here when we get there. So defense for Richard's team, I scored a 7. So like I was mentioning, there's a lot of overlapping weaknesses here, and that's where I find the biggest issue is. We have some ground weaknesses, we have some overlapping fire weaknesses, overlapping electric weaknesses, overlapping ice weaknesses, and then of course the freeze dry, fighting weaknesses. There's a lot of overlapping weaknesses. So when an opponent is team building for this team, they generally aren't going to need to have this wide expansive variety of moves, because those moves are going to be able to cover a wide variety of Richard's team. I won't get into all the Pokemon that are overlapping, but those are the types that are overlapping weaknesses. So, but his defensive Pokemon, Finny, is a great defensive backbone for the team. Pairing that with something like Magnezone is really nice, or Registeel. I would say pairing it with Crobat, but they do share an electric weakness. I mean, if you run Mega Altaria, Finny, and Crobat, then you could bait them into the Thunderbolt, and then you could switch in the Mega Altaria if it's already Mega'd, and you could absorb that easily, no problem with Mega Altaria, and start your setup from there. So there is options for his team. It's not like his team is just like completely like, you know, broken apart because of these overlapping weaknesses. He does have things to cover them. I mean, he's got the Levitate with the Electros, he's got the Flying Crobat, he's got the Flying with regular Altaria, he's got Chestnut to cover the ground weaknesses, he's got Mesprit to cover the fighting weaknesses, he's got Registeel and Magnezone to cover the poison weaknesses. He's got stuff to deal with it. It's just there's a lot of overlapping ones. So, but Tapu Fini being a good defensive Pokemon, having good speed for a defensive Pokemon, I believe it's base 85. Correct me if I'm wrong. But having Taunt, setting up Misty Terrain so your Pokemon can't be burned is really, really nice as well. Misty Terrain also lowering the damage of Dragon types attacks, which Richard found out, or Richard knew about, but bit him in the butt, unfortunately, in one of his matches. But yeah, the most important part is that Misty Terrain is stopping, you know, Mega Altaria from being burnt, or Mantine from being toxic, things like that, right? Or Mons from being paired, which is really nice as well. And then we have Mantine, which is the other defogger on the team. So this is what I mean. You have Tapu Fini, but then you have Mantine. Do you need both? I don't think so. They both do defog, but they're both weak to the same thing. Now, if this Mon was a Mon that wasn't weak to the same thing, then I could say you could pair them together and free up some move slots for either one of them. But they share the same weakness, basically. One times 4 to electric and the other times 2. They both defog, just one has a little bit more reliable recovery. In the Mantine, of course, with Roost. Mantine having access to water absorb, which will be nice, I guess, against the Typhlosion and the Crocodile here, being able to absorb those water type attacks. But I think Tapu Fini is totally fine to pair with those Pokemon instead. You don't necessarily need the water absorb. If there was some really strong water, I guess there is Urshifu Rapid Strike. I'm curious to know if it learns Thunder Punch. Yeah, it does learn Thunder Punch, so it kind of makes that point a little bit void, because Thunder Punch will absolutely KO it because it's times 4. But yeah, Mantine here does have some options for it. The Haze is really nice. I believe Finny doesn't get Haze, so that is an option. I mean, Crobat gets the Haze as well too. So like, there's a lot of Pokemon that are kind of like doing the same thing, but on the team at the same time, sharing weaknesses. So that's kind of where I get a little bit confused with the defense and things like that. But if you need that Pokemon to run both and you don't want to run Tapu Fini and Crobat, then I guess you have all-in-one Mantine here. A little less bulky than Tapu Fini overall, but still good. So Mantine, like I said, having access to Hurricane, Haze, Scald, does have Gunk Shot as well, which is really interesting. Only base 40 attacks, so not useful at all. Does have reliable recovery in Roost, and does also have access to Toxic and Whirlpool if you wanted to start trapping some Pokemon that are going to be problems for your team. Mirror Coat is an interesting option for this Pokemon because it's got such high special defense. You could potentially run like a Wakan Berry and then have Mirror Coat and then fire off a Mirror Coat on a proposed Thunderbolt or something like that, right? That would be kind of an interesting set. So like I mentioned, defensively, Crocodile has utility options in Stealth Rock, Intimidate, and Taunt, which are going to be really nice for this team. It can allow him to bring an offensive team instead of bringing Registeel, because Registeel is quite passive. He can bring Crocodile with a little bit more defensive or HP EVs with Intimidate, set up the Stealth Rock, be a good lead. Taunt those walls, right? Make sure they can't heal up. And then you have Typhlosion with Will-O-Wisp, which I mentioned is like this Suedo Mega Charizard X. Obviously, why I'm saying Suedo is because it's not nearly as bulky. But Will-O-Wisp really makes it annoying to deal with to some extent. And then Chestnut here is going to be your other hazard setter available on the team with Spikes. spikes and bulletproof, which I mentioned is kind of nice. You're not going to get hit by, you know, the gyro ball, shadow ball, sludge bomb, focus blast, moon blast, things like that. It's going to be really nice because it's going to force the opponents not to be able to run moon blast to some extent. Of course, they have flamethrower as well, or they can run in power flying. But yeah, Chestnut getting access to spikes, having reliable recovery and synthesis or drain punch. Leech Seed as well can be really obnoxious to deal with. Toxic is also really great. And Super Fang. This is another mon. I think 3 of his mons have Super Fang, which is really nice because, you know, the accuracy, of course, is a little bit tedious, especially when it misses. It's 90%, so it shouldn't miss, really, but it does sometimes. It's really nice because... Sorry. If, you know, a fairy type is going to be coming in, a bulky fairy type or something like that is going to be coming in on the Chestnut, you can Super Fang. Or if, like, you know, a steel type is coming in on Chestnut, or a flying type, like, you know, a Moltres or something like that is coming in on Chestnut, you can Super Fang. Yes, you'd fear the burn, or on Zapdos you'd fear the static, but you can 50% them. You force them into a position to roost, probably, or remain with that HP, and you switch out, right? And potentially be able to KO the Pokemon or deal a chunk of damage to the one that he's switching out. So Super Fang, a really good option on Pokemon. But Mesprit here, as I said I would get into later, is, you know, a really phenomenal defensive point to his team. Having access to Stealth Rock, Healing Wish, Future Sight, U-Turn, Knockoff, all these utility options on the team. And then, of course, it has that offensive power as well, which I mentioned. You know, with the stored power, the Calm Mind, the Weakness Policy, the Nasty Plot as well. And then the physical or special side is really, really good about it too. Another interesting note to make that I usually don't talk about because I don't see it used very often, but is a really, really actually good move. I was quite surprised, is Encore. We've seen Richard use this quite early in the draft. Really, really annoying to deal with because it forces you to switch out. So if you think you're going to set up in the Mesprit's face and you Encore, well, I mean, you're forced to switch out, or he's going to get a free switch, and then, you know, you're going to take a crap ton of damage for it. I think that is a really interesting thing to note on this Pokemon, and any Pokemon that has Encore. Richard made really good use of that move. I was really surprised. It made me want to try it myself. So, but next up on the defensive lineup here, we have Registeel, quite a passive Pokemon. Not bad by any means, just sometimes its passiveness gets taken advantage of if you're not the Iron Defense Body Press set. Clear Body is going to allow it to not have its stats lowered, which is kind of nice. You're not going to be bothered by that Liquidation. You're not going to be bothered by that Intimidate. But does have access to Stealth Route. Counter, I think, is an interesting option for it, because you can, you know, obviously Registeel is going to absorb most attacks, and if that Fighting type's in, you know, you could fire off that counter after that close combat for sure. But having access to Heavy Slam, does have T-Wave, does have Toxic, so has a lot of good defensive utility options. If there's some walls that you need to deal with, you throw in that Toxic. If there's a faster threat that you need to deal with that seems to be switching in, thinking you're a passive Pokemon, you can try and catch them with a T-Wave on the switch. Just a really, really bulky Pokemon overall. Can be switched in basically on any move. Obviously not those really strong fire type attacks or those really strong close combats from certain Pokemon, but base 150 defense, base 150 special defense, and 80 HP is plenty of bulk to absorb. It's almost like a blanket check, okay? Like how I was mentioning with Lucas and Jace. Just the thing with Lucas and Jace's is they're ghost types, and while knockoff and stuff is like really, really apparent, Earthquake, close combat, and fire type attacks are 3 things that you can use on that Pokemon, and are very common as well, if not more common. So, but yes, having Stealth Rocks on Registeel, pairing that with Mesprit is going to allow Mesprit to run a different role or have a different move slot open for it, maybe a Toxic itself. Or Calm Mind or Nasty Plot, which I think, you guys, like I've said many times before, is very, very important. You know, you pair, I wouldn't suggest this, but let's say you paired Mesprit, Registeel, and Crocodile you know, you could run rocks on Registeel, and then this frees up Crocodile's job and Mesprit's job to be different types of roles on the team that they're bringing, right? So last but not least, on the defensive option here, since Electros I find more of a utility switcher bruiser type Pokemon, is the Crobat. Now Crobat, I don't know why I don't ever go for this Pokemon, but it has such good utility options. I was so shocked. Having of course Defog and Roost are really nice, and the U-turn, but it also has Haze, which is really freaking awesome. Haze is just a move that I'm liking more and more as I start to expand my knowledge on draft and get better at draft. Haze is just such a good option to deal with these setup teams, which I personally have a lot of problems with. So really, really nice. Does have Nasty Plot as well, which I didn't even notice that on the look through here. But yes, the Haze is really nice. Does get Hex and Toxic, so you could be a little bit cheeky with that set. Has Tailwind if you need to outspeed certain threats. I think the Tailwind actually might be very useful for his team, considering his team is about average speed, is what I'd say. But has the Super Fang as well, which I've mentioned how important it is and why it's important. Yeah, I mean, you could use some things like Hypnosis or something like that, but that's generally what you're going to see of it defensively. Having the Haze, having the U-turn, the Brave Bird, and the Roost, it's going to be things like that. You know, maybe swapping one or two of the moves out with like a Toxic or a Super Fang or something, or a Tailwind, something like that, along those lines. Whatever the matchup that he is having, whatever it needs, he's obviously going to run those combinations of movesets. So. But next up we have the speed here, which I've been mentioning throughout the analysis. Now he's got Mega Altaria, which is the 80 something. Yeah, base 80. So in Adamant, that's 259. In Jolly, that's going to be 284. So like I said, hitting the 80 mark, I mean, you're just hitting average is what I'd say. 100 is good. Anything above 100 is becoming great. And then, you know, 315 above is awesome. That's what you want. So Mega Altaria, base 80 speed, not terrible, not the greatest. I'd say a little bit above, you're at average. You know, maybe a little above. Yeah, no, that's it. And then Finny, I believe, is actually faster than it. Yeah, base 85. So this is kind of where all his speed tiers are. 80s to the 100-ish, but nothing really higher besides this this Crobat. So there's two Mons. There's two Mons that are above 100, but 105. The Crobat is the one that I'm talking about. That's just way above it. That's really nice for his team. You have Crocodile, which is at base 92, so 311, which is not bad. It's a little bit better than the base 80. You have the Typhlosion, which I believe is 100, 328. So we're at good right now. Mesprit is also at 80 to 284. And then you have Zoroark, which is 105, so 339. Yeah, 105. And then you have Crobat at the massive 130, I believe, hitting 394. So this Mon can be a choice banded Mon, an adamant choice banded Mon, since it doesn't have to be. The thing with these, the reason that it's important to have these Mons above 100 or above 350 is because this thing called speed creeping. So speed creeping, what you can do with Pokemon like Crobat, which I know Richard has done and which I know these more experienced drafters will do, is speed creeping. So for example, you have Crobat who reaches 394 Jolly. Well, if you're versing a team, you look at all their speed tiers, you might not actually need it to be max speed. The reason people run max speed is because it's usually a ladder and you have no idea what the hell you're going to be going up against. But let's say you're going up against a team that's, its fastest Pokemon is 348, Kartana, okay? You do 0 speed investments into Crobat, that's 325. So let's move that up to 1 past 348. This is called speed creeping, okay? Move it one past 348, that's 349, meaning it's going to outspeed the Kartana, and you can run the rest of the EVs. So the rest of the EVs, which would be 164, since you don't need 252 in speed, you can put into attack, you can put into defense, you can put wherever you don't have EVs that you want. You know, because you're probably going to run 252 AHP, right? And then you can run 164 EVs into attack. Or you could run 164 into defense, making his defense 237. Or do that in SPDF, making it 237 SPDF. That's why I always am talking about those speed tiers being important. Sorry, I'm a little bit far away. I was far away from the mic. So that's why I mean, when if I rate a team of 7, you know, it's like, oh, why it's a 7? All these mons are at like, you know, 330 or 328 or 284. It's because there's going to be a lot of teams that are should be around that speed tier. So you're not going to be able to speed creep. You're not going to be able to spread out those EVs to survive that one attack or make it a 3-hit KO instead of a 2-hit KO. That's what's make or breaking some of these matches that you're going to see in your future drafts, in these future drafts, in this drafts. So that's what speed creeping is, and that's why it's important when you're drafting a team to be able to have these Pokemon that are above 350, so you can do that. But enough of my rant on speed creeping and speed. We're going to move on to hazards, which is a good part of Richard's team. He has Defog out of Crobat, out of Finny, out of Altaria, and out of Mantine. Does not have Rapid Spin, but he has so many Defoggers. Why this is important is the reason I always mention is because it frees up move slots and it allows you to run Pokemon differently. It allows you to spread out your team building and kind of, you know, if Mega Altaria is a good defogger against Team A, or if Crobat's a good defogger against Team B, you can use them differently, right? Or if Tapu Fini is going to be a good offensive Pokemon versus Team A, you can run, defog on Mega Altaria instead, right? Things like that. That's why it's good. But yeah, so he's got defog on those mons, and then he's got rocks out of Registeel, which is going to be the most notable one. But he's also got it out of Mesprit. He's got spikes on Chestnut, and he's got stealth rocks on Crocodile as well. I just want to double check here if Magnezone gets spike or stealth rocks. But yeah, so having stealth rocks on those 4 Pokemon, like I mentioned, the pair that I would most notably think it's good with is Registeel and Mesprit, but it could be Mesprit and Crocodile as well. Mesprit being able to run rocks or Registeel being able to run rocks is going to free up a move slot for the other Pokemon. So bringing up move slots is allowing you to prep differently, have a more breathing room to prep, make you a little bit more unpredictable. You know, if the opponent sees that your Registeel has stealth rocks, it's like, oh, okay, shit. Well, that's one move slot I don't know in the Mesprit. We're going to have to scout that out. We're going to have to see what it is. And then, lo and behold, it's too late. You take an Ice Beam to your, to your Garchomp or something like that, right? And you're like, oh, fuck. I thought that might have been Stealth Rocks, and I didn't think he'd have Ice Beam or something like that, right? So that's why that's important. Now, as for the momentum on this team, you have Mega Altaria, of course, which we've seen is the biggest snowballer on the team so far, of course, with the Dragon Dance. Surprisingly, we haven't seen the Calm Mind Draining Kiss Tapu Fini too much, or Moxie Crocodile, or Cosmic Power Stored Power Mesprit. We did see the Iron Defense Body Press Registeel. We did see a Coil Electros set, and we have seen Nasty Plot from Zoroark. Zoroark, I think, very strongly contending the Mega Altaria here for the biggest snowballer. But as you see, he has a lot of potential to snowball in a match. It's just how he is able to get those mons in. Like I've mentioned before, he has a lot of shared weaknesses. So sometimes I think it might be hard for him to find an opportunity to get these mons in safely or for free. Mega Altaria, though, has been the most consistent in doing this. So it's definitely a strong point to his team. It's just getting those mons in, I think, is the hard part for this team to figure out. Obviously, he's got the slow U-turn from Electros, or the slow Volt Switch from Electros, potentially a slow Volt Switch from Magnezone. But you know, if they have ground types, this presents a problem, as they can attack this mon. Of course, Electros is immune, but he will not be able to Volt Switch through a ground type or a Volt Absorber. Not to mention that his team is you know, more or less offensive. It's like bulky offense almost. So his team doesn't really like to get, like, you know, constantly attacked or you know, immune like that, right? So I think most of the momentum here is going to be coming from Mega Altaria. But if we're talking about Volt turning and stuff like that, he does have a lot of options available to him. He does have Volt Switch from Magnezone, U-turn from Mesprit, U-turn and Volt Switch and or Volt Switch from Electros, and then U-turn on Crobat as well, which is really nice. So he has a lot of these ways to get these mons in. It's just how does he do it effectively, right? You know, if you know, you can swap into an Earthquake, that's going to be on Magnezone with Mesprit, and then you can U-turn out and create some momentum in that regard. But the biggest part for the momentum for me on this team is the setup momentum. He has a lot of good setup sweepers. It's, like I said, just how does he get them in? I think that's the most important part to this team, and how he gets it in. You know, without them falling victim to strong attacks. The most notable thing is I'm really surprised I didn't see... sorry, it's not Cosmic Power. Mesprit doesn't get Cosmic Power. Mesprit gets Calm Mind. I was really surprised that I hadn't seen a Calm Mind Weakness Policy Mesprit set, since it does get Stored Power, which I think would be a really effective set for him, since a lot of people didn't, you know, really run taunts. There aren't a ton of Dark types floating around, so it might be not a ton of Dark types being brought to matches, is what I would say more. But yeah, overall that momentum is a 7.5. So overall, Richard's team a 38. I think his team is on the average level. There's definitely some things that would need to be fixed, but there's some really, really good things about this team as well, which we've seen Richard use and abuse in some of his matches. My favorite Pokemon on this team, though, has been Crobat. He's just been so so good about using his Crobat and how he uses it and the movesets that he's been playing. But yeah, 38, it's an average team, has some things that need fixing. Like I mentioned, those overlapping weaknesses. He definitely could have made some trades for, I think. But overall, not a bad team by any means. And guys, this is our last draft analysis, and we'll catch you guys in playoffs.